Hey guys, tonight we're slipping past the creaky wooden doors of a medieval tavern, thick with smoke, sweat, and the tang of roast meat, to explore exactly what you might have been served if you'd wandered in hungry and penniless. Picture this long oak tables sticky with ale, toothless men banging their mugs for more, and someone in the corner trying to barter a turnip for a bowl of stew. You're in for a feast, but not the kind you'd expect. You're about to discover what junk food looked like centuries ago, how desperate peasants begged for scraps, and what bizarre ingredients might end up in your bowl. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this on your modern stomach. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. There's something comforting about knowing we're all drifting off together across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the warmth of the tavern, and it hits you like a brick wall, the mingled aromas of spilt ale, wet wool, and overcooked meat. It's loud in here. Not with music exactly, but with laughter, rowdy nasal, some of it edged with a threat. You dodge a flying crust of bread and duck under a wobbling candle lantern as you make your way to the trestle tables. It's standing room only near the fire where the scent is strongest. Something meaty, something burnt, something unidentifiable. You're starving. You don't care. The taverner, a broad woman with forearms like tree trunks, slams a bowl in front of the man beside you. It's steaming, thick and grayish. He digs in without hesitation. You dare to ask what's in it, and he replies with a grin that shows 1.5 teeth: pottage. You're about to learn that pottage is the medieval tavern's version of an all-you-can-eat mystery stew. It's a never-ending cauldron topped off throughout the day with whatever's on hand. One moment it's lentils and barley, the next a handful of chopped leeks, the remains of a hare, and maybe a few fish heads if it's a Friday. And that's only if the taverner is feeling generous. The broth is seasoned, but not like seasoning. Think parsley, sage, and wild garlic if you're lucky, but more often a mix of ale dregs and ashes from the bottom of the pot. Salt rare, imported, saved for nobility. Pepper only if someone smuggled it in. Still, you grab a wooden spoon from a shared pot and dig in. It's not half bad. Nutty gritty with the faint chew of some root vegetable. You guess it might be parsnip, or maybe turnip. It's hard to tell in the dark. As you eat, you glance around and realize this isn't just a tavern. It's a town hall, a local courtroom, a makeshift hostel, and sometimes a fighting pit. On the floor near the hearth, a man is sleeping with his mouth open. Another is bartering something wrapped in cloth for a chunk of cheese. You're tempted to order that next cheese. But you should know not all medieval cheese is created equal. If the taverner offers green cheese, it doesn't mean it's flavored. It means it hasn't matured. It's soft, curdled, barely salted, and possibly still alive. You'll eat it anyway. She slaps around on the table in front of you with a chunk of hard brown bread. This is cheat bread, the lowest quality, cheapest kind, made from sifted, overmilled wheat and rye. It's dense, slightly sour, and absolutely necessary to soak up whatever stew you're choking down. And here's the kicker: in most taverns, the bread is used more as a utensil than a food. It's called a trencher, and it's meant to absorb the stew, hold your meat, and be tossed aside when soggy. But here, you eat the trencher too. Every crumb. Hunger trumps etiquette. You sip from your mug warm ale, faintly sweet, maybe even honeyed if the cask hasn't gone off. It's flat, barely fizzy, but stronger than you'd think. Water's too risky. Ale is safer. Even children drink it here. Nearby, a pot of something darker is being stirred. You lean in. It's black pudding, yes, the infamous blood sausage. Oats fat and pig's blood boiled in a casing made from intestine. It's a delicacy in these parts, served hot, sometimes sliced into bowls of pottage. You try not to think about it. Then again, compared to everything else, it smells downright gourmet. The man across from you cackles and lifts a skewer roasted eel, fresh from the river and charred over open flame. He waves it at you before gnawing it down, bones and all. You're too slow to stop the taverner from placing one in your bowl. She gives you a look like you'd better eat it or leave. You do. You regret it. But your stomach doesn't. Evening deepens. The light shifts from smoky orange to inky black. The candles drip wax onto every surface. Someone's brought out a lyre badly tuned. Two men arm wrestle over a half-eaten pie. The scent of it wafts toward you, meaty, peppery, baked in a tough, lard-laced crust. That's no ordinary pie. That's game pie, the crown jewel of tavern indulgence. If you're lucky, it contains venison rabbit or pigeon. If not, it might be crow or cat. You'd rather not ask. Either way, it's hot filling and slathered in a sharp vinegar gravy to hide whatever was too far gone. You glance back at the hearth where a man is roasting chestnuts in a dented iron pan. A luxury. A comfort food. He cracks one open and offers you half. You're touched. Then he asks for your boots in return. You decline. At the far end of this tavern, something smells sweet. Your curiosity carries you over. It's frumenty, a sort of wheat porridge boiled in milk or ale and flavored with dried fruit if available. It's warm, soothing, almost dessert-like. You savor it slowly. Your belly finally full, you realize something else. This isn't a tavern meal. It's survival. And every bite has a story older than you. But the night's not over yet. Outside the tavern walls, bread riots are simmering, taxes loom, and the next shipment of salt fish may not arrive in time. So don't fall asleep yet, because there's more to uncover in this world of flavor famine and firelight. You lean back on the splintered bench, your hands still sticky with stew and ale, and try to make sense of what just happened to your taste buds. But there's no time to reflect, because the tavern ever alive begins to churn in new directions. Behind you, someone bellows for more bread. The taverner shouts back, "Ain't no more till morning," and slams a mug down hard enough to make the table jump. You realize bread isn't a guarantee here. It's a privilege. And not all bread is created equal. The hierarchy of medieval bread is a story in itself. If you're rich, you eat manchette, white, fluffy, finely sifted wheat bread, the good stuff baked in private kitchens or noble manors. But here in the tavern, what you're chewing is more likely maslin, a gritty mix of rye and wheat, dark and coarse. The poorer the mix, the harder the chew. And if you're truly scraping by, you're stuck with barley bread, or even horse bread, dense bitter made from beans, peas bran, and anything else that might resemble flour. And flour, that's not a pristine white powder here. It's often milled with stones, meaning your bread comes with an accidental crunch, tiny fragments of grit that slowly file your teeth down. You run your tongue across your molars, suddenly aware that dentistry hasn't been invented yet. Not the modern kind, anyway. Just then, someone beside you drops a satchel on the table. It spills open dried beans, onions, and something that looks like a pigeon carcass. The man grunts, nods at the kitchen, and gets up to haggle. You're witnessing a quiet but common ritual: bring your own ingredients. Taverns weren't always responsible for feeding you from their own stores. Sometimes they were more like community kitchens. You supply what you've got, and the taverner turns it into a meal for a fee. The fee depends on your attitude and what kind of mood she's in. You remember the stew from earlier, and suddenly wonder how many customer contributions went into it. Better not to ask. A sharp clang interrupts your thoughts. Someone's kicked over the brazier, where a few strips of something are sizzling. You lean closer. It's not bacon, not really. It's salt pork, hard tough, and mostly fat, but oh, how it keeps. In a world with no refrigeration, salt is gold. Meat is rubbed, brined, dried, or smoked. A good piece of pork could be preserved for weeks or months. And in here it gets cubed, fried, or tossed into pottage until it melts into unrecognizable deliciousness. You get offered a bite. It's chewy, smoky, and leaves your lips slick with grease. Not bad, actually. But it'll sit in your stomach like a brick for hours. As the crowd around you thickens, the noise swells. A traveling peddler is waving strips of dried fish and calling them fresh, a claim that, given the smell, is dubious at best. Still, you watch as a few coins change hands. Fish, especially in inland taverns, is almost always salted or dried and almost never actually fresh. Unless you're by the coast or near a clean river, your odds of finding a fish that hasn't been stiff for days are slim to none. But even dried cod or herring has its place here. Rehydrated in ale or milk, shredded into stews, mashed into pies, it becomes the tavern's answer to meatless Friday. You'd eat it. You'd have no choice. Someone nearby unwraps a greasy linen bundle revealing a pie. Everyone immediately leans in. Meat pies were the street food of their time, sold from taverns or even mobile stalls, hot, portable, and able to hide almost anything. This one smells peppery. Inside you catch glimpses of veal raisins and perhaps hard-boiled egg. It's seasoned well, the crust thick and greasy from suet. But don't get too excited. The pie could just as easily contain lungs, gizzards, or leftovers from yesterday's roast. One pie, endless possibilities, most of them questionable. At the next table, a group is passing around what looks like a roasted root. It's skirret, a sweet white root vegetable boiled or roasted until soft. Tastes a little like parsnip, and licorice had a strange child. Beside it, roasted leeks, onions blackened on the edges, and small apples baked in ashes. It's a rough vegetarian feast, probably enjoyed by the poorer sort, or someone trying to avoid meat for religious reasons. And then you see something strange, thin, flat cakes on a wooden plank, slathered with something black and sticky. That's honey cake, and it's a rarity. Made from oats flour and honey. When they can get it, these sweet cakes were considered indulgent. The black spread, probably a mix of mashed prunes or maybe a thick ale syrup. Either way, it smells amazing. The kind of smell that makes you forget you're in a room where half the floor is straw-covered mud. A small boy scurries past with a jug nearly the size of his head. You follow the jug's path to the bar and realize it's mead. Honey wine. Not every tavern stocks it, but when they do, it draws a crowd. Sweeter and stronger than ale mead, is made by fermenting honey with water and yeast. In some cases, they add herbs, spices, or even chunks of fruit to deepen the flavor. You sip it and find it dangerously smooth. sweet floral with a boozy kick that sneaks up slowly like falling asleep by a fire and waking up to realize your boots are gone. Speaking of sleep, the back corner of the tavern is filling with bodies, some seated, others slumped against the wall, one man half under the table. They're not dead, just sleeping off the meal. In the medieval world, taverns often doubled as inns or night shelters. For a few pennies or just good favor, you could claim a place on the floor near the embers and hope the rats didn't visit your socks in the night. You consider curling up yourself, but something new is bubbling in the back, a pot with a lid dancing from the heat beneath. The taverner lifts it just enough for steam to escape, and the smell makes your eyes sting. It's onion ale soup made from boiled onions, stale ale, and leftover bones. It's thin but hot, and it scours your throat like a rough blessing. You drink it anyway. It warms everything, even your soul. The tavern dims again. The fire has collapsed into red coals. A dog sleeps in the ashes. The last mug is drained, the last crust nibbled. But still you're not quite done. Because you haven't tried the most bizarre item yet, the one that only appears at the end of the night, when the casks are nearly dry, and the kitchen is scraping its soul together. You hear it now, the words passed around like legend. Pig's trotter jelly. You brace yourself, and in the next section, you'll find out if your stomach's strong enough to face it. The bowl hits the table with a wet plop, and everyone nearby leans in, not out of hunger, but morbid curiosity. You stare into the gelatinous wobble in front of you, vaguely translucent and quivering, with each footstep on the tavern floor. This, you realize, is pig's trotter jelly. Not a nickname, not a euphemism. Just boiled down pig feet cooled until the natural collagen congeals into a shimmering jiggly slab of protein-rich. Dessert. No, not dessert. Never that. In a world without refrigeration, you quickly learn that preservation isn't just a technique, it's a necessity. And jelly made from boiled bones, skin hooves, and connective tissue is more than a dish. It's a solution. It fills the belly, stretches leftovers, and strangely enough was seen as quite nourishing. Packed with fat and salt, this medieval delicacy could be served cold, sliced like a pudding, or reboiled and mixed into soups and pottages. You hesitate. But the man across from you nods encouragingly and spoons a bite into his mouth with gusto. He's missing 3 teeth but still manages to grin. You steel yourself, take a bite, and immediately regret asking what's in it. It's slippery savory with a texture that's medically concerning, but filling, inexplicably filling. By now, your stomach is a cauldron of eel blood pudding, salted pork, gritty bread, and jelly made from animal feet. You've officially become part of the tavern, and it's not just about food anymore. The longer you sit, the more you realize how central taverns were to medieval life. They weren't just pit stops for drink and dinner. They were community hubs, information exchanges, gossip centers, and political battlegrounds. A place where a serf could whisper rumors about the local lord, where a baker might warn of rising flour prices, where songs were born, alliances forged, and knives occasionally drawn. In the far corner, a minstrel begins plucking a lute, plinking out a tune as old as the floorboards. The lyrics are bawdy, the chorus louder than the verses, and the rhyme scheme sacrificed halfway through in favor of drunken shouting. Someone slaps the table to keep time. Another starts pounding their mug like a drum. Before long, the whole room is vibrating with a kind of joyful chaos. You take another sip of mead and find yourself swaying slightly. The rhythm is infectious, the melody simple, the lyrics thankfully unintelligible. You hum along anyway. Then the song changes, slower now, melancholy. A ballad about a lost lover and a winter storm. Everyone quiets. Even the drunk in the corner stops snoring for a second. In these moments, the tavern shifts from battlefield to chapel. Food and drink no longer matter. Just voices, memory, and the warm weight of shared humanity. But the quiet doesn't last. A door slams open, cold air rushes in. Two men burst through muddy and breathless, shouting something about thieves on the ridge and missing wagons. Suddenly, attention shifts. The taverner lifts a finger. Sit, eat, then talk. That's the rule here. No drama until you've had your stew. The men obey. Bowls are filled, bread-torn mugs passed. You watch them eat in silence, steam curling off their fingers. Whatever news they brought, it can wait until the bellies are full. That's the unspoken law of taverns across the land. The world can end, but not before supper. And supper, you've now learned, can be anything. You look over to a new arrival hunched over a plate of something stringy and dark. It's lamprey, an eel-like fish prized by the upper classes, but every now and then it finds its way into humble taverns. Rich and oily, sometimes spiced with cinnamon or nutmeg when you can get your hands on it. Today it's been roasted and served with a spoonful of sharp vinegar sauce. The man eating it looks like he hasn't smiled in a decade. You assume it's authentic. At your own table, the pickings are thinning. The fire is dying. The taverner appears again with a final round wort cakes, a dense, bitter snack made from the grains left over from ale brewing. Nothing is wasted. These flattened brown discs are chewy, earthy, and complicated. You chew slowly, chasing the flavor with a gulp of ale so flat it's practically soup. Then comes the turnip wine. You didn't ask for it. No one ever does. But it's here poured into a small wooden cup by a man who looks entirely too eager. Turnip wine is exactly what it sounds like: fermented turnips. A peasant's answer to fancy vintages. It burns going down, smells like wet socks, and lingers in your nose like betrayal. You sip it. Because of course you do. The conversation around you swirls taxes, harvests, saints, sin, and superstition. A woman swears her cow is bewitched. A man claims he saw a wolf wearing a priest's robes. No one questions him. Everyone has their own strange tale. The ale just makes them louder. Then comes dessert. Yes, there was such a thing. Kind of. A tray passes by holding a few sticky treats, marchpane and almond paste sweet rolled into little balls and dusted with sugar, if sugar could be afforded. Beside it, candied fennel seeds, a few dried dates, maybe a spoonful of rose-hip jam, if someone splurged. These are not everyday indulgences. They're rare, precious, and gone in seconds. You manage to snag a piece of marchpane. It melts on your tongue, like medieval marzipan, sweet, oily, oddly gritty. A noble finish to a peasant's feast. The fire is now low, the candles nearly spent. And in this soft, flickering quiet, the tavern shifts once more. You feel yourself easing into the warmth belly, full of strange things, heart oddly settled. You realize that in this place, filthy, loud, chaotic as it is, there's a rhythm, a pattern, a fragile kind of comfort. But your journey into medieval food isn't over yet, because soon we're stepping outside these tavern walls and following the farmers, hunters, brewers, and bakers who kept these tables stocked in the first place. You've seen what's on the plate next, you'll learn what it took to get it there. Morning creeps in with a low fog that hugs the cobblestones outside the tavern, dampening every footstep and muffling the world like a thick wool blanket. You shuffle out into the chill, blinking against the gray light, your breath forming small clouds as your body still digests last night's concoction of pork fat, sour ale, and turnip wine. The tavern door creaks closed behind you, sealing in the laughter crumbs and smoke of the night. Out here, it's a different world, the beginning of the food chain, not the end. You follow the narrow path through the village past crumbling wattle fences and thatched cottages toward the rising scent of earth manure and fresh hay. This is where food is born, where tavern fare is fought for, scratched out of unyielding ground by hands calloused and numb. A peasant bends over in the field, yanking stubborn turnips from the frost-stiff soil. His fingers are red, his breath steaming. This is one of your food suppliers, though. No one gives him a title, just a bent back and a short life. He eats what he grows, barley beans, leeks, cabbages, and trades whatever's left to the taverner in exchange for pottage, a warm hearth, or stale ale. You pass a pigsty, next muddy, noisy, and very alive. The pigs snort and root, oblivious to their fate. Their currency here. Salt pork, blood pudding, pigs' trotters, bacon rinds, all of it starts with these snuffling, grunting creatures. Nothing will be wasted. The ears will be fried, the fat rendered, the skin turned to crackling. Even the bones will find their way into soup. Further on you see a boy herding geese toward the town square. He shouts, waves his arms, and the birds scatter only to regroup in noisy defiance. Geese are luxury meat, too expensive for the average tavern bowl, but their eggs, those are gold. A tavern that serves poached goose eggs or mixes them into a pie is one with strong farmer ties or deep pockets. The boy's father is already at the square unloading a cart of goods. Apples with blemished skins, a few withered onions, a bundle of dried herbs wrapped in rough linen. He'll barter them to the taverner in hopes of securing dinner for the family. That's how it works. Coin is rare. Trade is everything. Food flows on favors, promises, and the occasional threat. Across the way, a baker fans open his shutters. The scent of rye and soot drifts into the street. Inside his shop, if you can call it that, a crude oven churns out loaves by the dozen. Not soft and golden like modern bread, but dark, heavy rounds stacked high. This is the source of the tavern's trencher bread, the thing your stew sits on before you eat the plate itself. And even this baker, powdered in flour and sweat, owes part of every batch to the local lord as tax. You peek into the oven and spot a surprise, a few bread loaves studded with herbs. Maybe marjoram, maybe parsley. A rare treat for a special occasion. Most loaves here are plain built for survival, not delight. But when the harvest is good or the mood is generous, even the poor get flavor. Back on the road, you hear it before you see it, the creak of wagon wheels and the rustle of bundled straw. A fishmonger approaches from the coast, his cart stacked with dried herring and salted cod, packed in barrels or strung like laundry. He's been on the road 3 days. His goods reek, but the tavern needs him. It's a Friday tomorrow, and that means no meat for anyone who's trying to stay in the church's good graces. You wave him down and ask about business. He shrugs. Depends how many coins are left in their pockets after taxmen come through. He spits in the road, adjusts a salt-stiff glove, and moves on. At the edge of the village, a brewer stirs a massive open vat of bubbling grain. Ale, the true lifeblood of the tavern. Water might kill you, but ale is boiled, fermented, and blessed by yeast. It's safe, nourishing, and if strong enough, blissfully numbing. This brew's young, he says, just a few days old. A weak ale barely intoxicating. Child's breakfast, he calls it, and laughs. He offers you a ladleful. You sip. It's yeasty, faintly sweet, and oddly comforting. It'll be in mugs by nightfall, ladled from kegs and slammed down beside greasy stews and salted fish. The brewer's wife, you notice, is collecting wort, the leftover grain mash after brewing. That mash will go to feed the pigs, thicken soups, or be baked into those strange wort cakes you gnawed on last night. Everything comes full circle. Nothing is wasted. Waste is death. You continue on past a chicken yard where hens scratch at frozen clumps of dirt. Eggs, feathers, sometimes even the birds themselves will end up on the tavern's fire. A roast hen is rare but prized. More likely their bones will be boiled to flavor soup than the carcasses picked clean and tossed into pottage. And speaking of flavor near the church wall, a woman is bundling herbs, rosemary, thyme, fennel, garlic. She's the village wise woman, part herbalist, part cook, part suspected witch. She supplies taverns with the spices and tinctures that elevate the edible to the enjoyable or at least tolerable. Her bag smells like old forests and musty cellars. She hands you a sprig of mint and tells you it's good for your gut after jelly made of pig's feet. You thank her, sincerely. By the time you return to the tavern, the air has warmed slightly and smoke curls from the chimney. A new day has begun. The benches are being scrubbed, stale ale tossed out back, and the stew pot reheated. In just hours, another crowd will gather, famished and hopeful bellies growling for anything hot and filling. And the taverner. She's back at the hearth, sleeves rolled up, face flushed from the fire, chopping onions and humming low. She sees you, nods. Breakfast, you pause. You've seen where it all comes from now, every egg, every root, every snout and hoof and herring. But you're still hungry. You nod. Just bread, you say. She laughs. Sure. Bread. And maybe a bit of eel pie left. You don't argue, because in a medieval tavern you never say no to food. Not when you've seen what it takes to bring it to the table. And trust me, there's much stranger stuff waiting in the kitchen. You sit back down on the same worn bench from last night, the one polished smooth by generations of cloaked elbows and hungry bodies. The tavern is quieter in the morning. The air smells less like sweat and smoke, more like damp wood and bubbling broth. A few coals still glow in the hearth, and the large stew pot. Last night's faithful cauldron has been scraped and refilled. Breakfast, it turns out, is simply an earlier version of dinner. You're handed a slice of rye bread coarser than anything modern and spread with dripping. That's fat beef or pork rendered until liquid, then chilled until it solidifies into a thick, pale paste. It's cheap, it's fatty, and it keeps you alive through winter. You chew slowly, grateful and slightly horrified. Across the room, a young boy hunches over his own bowl, and you recognize what he's eating. Milk pottage. A gentler version of last night's stew, this one thickened with oat's milk, if the cow has been kind, and a touch of honey, if someone's hoarded it. It's warm, bland, and quietly nourishing. Another man stirs something else entirely. Ale-battered apples, slices dipped in thin beer batter, and fried on a pan placed directly over the coals. A festival treat may be left over from a wedding. The batter is oily, the apple soft, and the taste unexpectedly sweet. You wonder what else counts as breakfast here. As you watch the small rituals of the morning unfold, you begin to notice the rhythm of tavern food across the day. There are no menus, no meal times. The stew never stops. Ingredients come and go like travelers, sometimes barley, sometimes bacon. It all depends on who walks through the door and what they're carrying. You overhear a man negotiating with the taverner now. He has mushrooms wrapped in a cloth and swears they're not poisonous. She eyes them, shrugs, and drops them into the pot. Another offers her a bundle of dandelion greens. Into the mix they go. The stew transforms with every hand that contributes flavors, shifting hour by hour, never the same twice. You take another bite of your dripping soaked bread and think about how dynamic food is here. Not just seasonal, but hourly. You don't choose what to eat, you receive it, and you hope it's hot. The morning unfolds. A merchant in a fur-lined cloak leans on the bar, sipping a mug of mulled ale, warm, gently spiced, probably infused with cloves or cinnamon if he's feeling extravagant. He asks for dried figs. The taverner raises an eyebrow. "You think this is London," she mutters. He laughs and hands over a small pouch that clinks. Moments later, he's served a shallow bowl of oat gruel with a swirl of cream. Not bad. But not figs. In the corner, a couple breaks their fast with hard cheese and sour cherries picked last summer and soaked in brine. The cheese is so strong it bites back. But paired with the sharp fruit, it works. You imagine this is the kind of pairing nobles might pretend to hate, but secretly love. The taverner brings you a warm mug of posset, a medieval cure-all. Its milk curdled with wine or ale, sometimes thickened with eggs, and sweetened with whatever's around. It smells like a sour custard, and you wince at the first sip. But it coats your throat and settles your churning belly. You start to understand why they drank it after nearly every meal. Suddenly, there's a clatter outside. A young man stumbles in, wrapped in a hunter's cloak, holding something wrapped in linen. He pulls it open and reveals a small hare freshly killed, still warm. The room takes notice. He haggles with the taverner. After a few firm words and a shared nod, she claims it. Within minutes, it's skinned, jointed, and simmering with leeks and wild garlic. The tavern shifts, heads rise, nostrils flare. Fresh meat means something special, even if it's tough, even if it's gamey. It's rare enough to be honored. While the hare simmers, the taverner pulls out a crock of something unusual mustard paste. Coarse ground seeds mixed with vinegar, or even wine stored for months. She slathers it on a piece of pork rind and offers it to the hunter, who devours it in one bite. You ask for a taste and get a smear on the edge of your trencher. It stings, your nose burns your tongue, and wakes you right up. Near the hearth, a kettle whistles. Inside, herbal tisane, a tea of sorts. No caffeine, just steeped leaves and flowers, maybe chamomile yarrow or meadowsweet. It's calming, earthy, sipped slowly. It's almost like prayer. A woman next to you nibbles a slice of nut bread made with ground hazelnuts and crushed barley. It's a rare treat baked in the home and brought here to share. She dunks it into her pottage, softening it until it becomes almost cake-like. Her smile suggests this is the highlight of her week. Then someone produces quince paste, a slab of jellied fruit boiled down with honey. It glows amber in the dim morning light and smells like summer locked inside sugar. You take a piece and let it melt slowly, the first real sweetness you've tasted since arriving. You glance around and notice no one's in a rush. No one's watching a clock. The meal unfolds like a conversation, quiet, continuous, unhurried. One bite at a time. One story, one spoonful. A rhythm not just of hunger, but of shared survival. And as the taverner adds fresh barley to the pot and throws in a pinch of dried lavender, you realize breakfast is over only when the stew pot says it is. Not when a bell rings. Not when a schedule demands it. The tavern will feed until empty. Then it will rest. Then it will feed again. You push back your bowl warm now from the inside out and prepare to leave again. But as you rise, the taverner calls, "You'll be back." And she's right. Because out there, food is work. But in here, food is warmth. In here, every bite is a story, a gamble, a miracle. And you haven't even tasted the tavern pies of festival season yet. Just wait. Things are about to get inventive. By midday, the tavern is once again full. You step back in and are instantly enveloped by a swirl of heat chatter and smells both inviting and questionable. Smoke from the hearth lingers near the beams, carrying with it the scent of sizzling onions, fresh bread crust, and something sweet baking under a clay lid near the fire. Midday is when things truly come alive in here, when laborers stumble in with mud still on their boots, when merchants clink coins against wooden counters, and when the stew pot earns its keep. The bench you left earlier now hosts a trio of farmers, all red-cheeked and loud, sharing a dish you haven't seen before. It's flat round and glistening flour cakes fried in animal fat. Think of them as proto-pancakes crisped around the edges and dotted with herbs. One of the men slathers his with soft cheese and folds it like a sandwich. You nod in approval. Smart man. Behind the bar, the taverner is stuffing something into pastry dough. She's muttering about Badger again and shaking her head. It's game pie day, apparently. And in the right hand's hers especially, that could mean anything from venison to rabbit pigeon to squirrel. Even badger. Wrapped in a thick lard crust pastry that's more armor than delicacy, these pies are built for stamina, not style. You're handed a warm wedge. The filling is dark, salty, and bursting with pepper. You can't quite tell what animal it came from, but you don't stop eating. It's too good. And besides, the rule of the tavern applies: don't ask, don't gag. A young woman next to you is dipping hard-boiled eggs into brine sauce, a sharp mix of vinegar, mustard seed, and crushed herbs. The eggs are soft yolks, pale orange, the whites slightly rubbery. She offers you one. It's tangy, salty, and oddly comforting, like biting into something that was always meant to last forever, even if it never does. By now, the pottage has changed again. You notice the color shift first, deeper now, almost brown, richer. Someone's added mushrooms, leeks, and a thick barley paste that clings to your spoon like glue. You spot slivers of salted fish, too, giving it a briny punch. It's no longer just stew, it's the story of every trade made this morning, every leftover folded in every small act of hunger and hope. A living broth. A man seated beside you unwraps something special, a foraged greens tart. The crust is thin and cracked, filled with nettles, sorrel, and egg, probably from the village herbalist's basket. You'd think it bitter, but it's been baked just long enough to mellow the bite, and someone's added wild garlic. It tastes of forest floors and damp hedgerows and makes you feel strangely clean. Then comes the roast marrowbone, hot and glistening, set down in front of a man with a wooden pick. He scoops out the fatty center and spreads it onto toast, if it can be called toast. It's more like burned rye slab. But the marrow melts like butter, rich and primal. You get a taste and the flavor stays with you, like a memory, earthy, dense, and utterly medieval. On a low table near the fire, a clay pot holds something new, spiced chickpeas. They're rare here, likely brought in from a distant market, maybe by a monk with a flair for travel. They've been boiled, crushed, and tossed with vinegar and herbs. A strange thing to find in a peasant tavern, but this is no ordinary day. Someone's celebrating something, or mourning something, or maybe just trying to impress a new cook. And then from the back emerges the day's true star, apple and onion pasties folded and crimped into half-moon shapes, their insides soft with sweet and sour contrast. You take one bite through the flaky pastry and are hit with a blend of caramelized onion and tart apple cooked down to a jammy consistency. You don't expect to love it, but you do. Nearby, a minstrel takes a break from tuning his instrument to slurp eel broth, a thin, savory liquid flecked with oil, flavored with bay and bits of celery root. It's served in a chipped wooden bowl with a crust of blackened bread for dipping. He sips like he's drinking gold. A table of traders is gorging on a large shared platter, cold cuts of preserved meats likely brought in from another village. Slices of salted beef, dried sausage, and chunks of smoked lamb. All of it intense. Salty. Designed for preservation, not pleasure. But with ale in hand and friends beside you, it becomes something greater. Someone passes you a flagon of cider. It's cloudy sharp with the bite of autumn in every sip. Pressed apples, wild fermented, stored in barrels for months. It's stronger than ale, and just as loved. You begin to notice the background music of the tavern, the scrape of spoons against bowls, the soft groan of benches, the pop of logs collapsing in the hearth. These aren't just sounds. They're a lullaby of survival. In one corner, a man is ladling liver stew into a cracked bowl. It's dark, thickened with blood and wine, the kind of dish meant to put meat back on a working man's bones. Another man is gnawing on a gristle-filled sausage, possibly made of awful breadcrumbs and hope. It's chewy, rich, and clings to your teeth, but you'd eat it again. Finally, as the sun crests high above the rafters, the taverner brings out one last curiosity, ginger root boiled in ale. A remedy for coughs. A reward for the brave. A punishment for those who don't ask what's in the pot. You sip cautiously and feel fire in your veins. Medicinal, yes, but also strangely addictive. And as you lean back full once more, the table cleared of crumbs and questions, you begin to understand in the medieval tavern, food isn't just nourishment. It's identity. It's economy. It's art and accident and survival stirred into one pot. But don't get too comfortable, because with the sun heading west, supper looms, and that's when the real feasts begin. The ones with songs, secrets, and things you never imagined could end up in a pie. The sun begins its slow descent behind the crooked rooftops of the village, casting long amber shadows across the tavern floor. The heat of the day mellows into a soft, golden hush. Outside, boots shuffle on dirt roads as the workers return, fingers black with soot, knees stiff from fields, backs bent from barrels. Inside, the tavern stirs in anticipation. Supper is coming, and with it the most theatrical, chaotic, and imaginative meal of the medieval day. You take your place near the hearth again. The coals glow like dragons' eyes, and above them a spit turns slowly. It creaks with rhythm, revealing the centerpiece of tonight's feast, a spit-roasted capon, a castrated rooster prized for its tender meat and rich flavor. Stuffed with leeks, sage, and stale bread soaked in milk, it rotates slowly, dripping fat into the fire, crackling like a promise. It smells like feast days and forgotten birthdays. But capon isn't for everyone. Most diners here will be served a generous helping of thickened pottage. Tonight's version includes lentils, wild carrots, and torn-up pieces of last night's trencher bread, softened and stirred in until the whole thing has the texture of memory. A bowl lands in front of you, steaming and alive with the ghosts of earlier meals. You dig in. Across the tavern, a woman ladles out something dark and shiny into small wooden bowls. It's leek and prune stew, a surprisingly common pairing. Sweet meets pungent. The result is earthy, tangy, and oddly delightful. Dried prunes were precious, sometimes imported, and when stewed with herbs and onions, they make for a rich, syrupy base that masks the tougher cuts of meat. You glance to your left, someone is slicing into a round loaf stuffed with something squishy. It's a mushroom and curd cheese pie. The crust is cracked, the filling soft and herbed. The cheese is fresh, likely sheep's milk curdled that morning and wrapped in cloth. The mushrooms foraged. Possibly edible. Probably. As the room fills, the taverner makes her rounds, spoon in hand, tasting from every pot like a general inspecting troops. You see her adjust a spice here, toss in a handful of chopped sage there. She grabs a pinch of saffron from a tiny pouch and rubs it between her fingers into a pot of sweet barley mash. It glows golden, turns the whole cauldron into a bubbling treasure. She motions to a lanky man with a grin too wide and a vest too tight. He produces a tray covered with small clay pots. Inside, fermented garlic paste, sharp, strong, and enough to clear your sinuses for days. People dip bits of bread in it, some smear it on pie crusts. Others mix it into their broth. You try a spoonful straight. It knocks your thoughts loose but leaves your mouth craving more. Then the moment everyone's been waiting for, the unveiling of the meat pudding. It's not sweet. It's not pretty. It's made of shredded lamb grains, herbs, and thickened blood steamed for hours in a cloth sack, and then dumped quivering onto a serving board. The room goes silent for a beat as it's sliced. It smells like iron and rosemary, and something too ancient to name. You're given a chunk. It's dense, rich, velvety in a way only slow-cooked meat and fat can be. It coats your tongue like wool and warms you from your belly to your toes. Someone else is chewing something crispy and whispering about the fish surprise. You soon learn it's smoked herring stuffed with oats wrapped in cabbage leaves and baked in coals. The cabbage blackens the oats, puff, the fish smolders. It tastes smoky, nutty, and slightly sinister. A jug of ale posset makes the rounds again, milk thickened with hot ale, and eggs laced with nutmeg and sugar. It's thick as a milkshake and just as heavy. You sip carefully, unsure if it's meant to be drunk or chewed. At the far end of the tavern, near the barrels, the noble table is receiving gilded pies. No, really. The crusts are painted with egg yolk and brushed with real gold leaf, though it's flaking off like glitter. Inside, probably goose or lark or spiced pork layered with dried apricots and cloves. You won't taste it, but you admire it from a distance. Back at your table, a new plate arrives. You stare. It's jelly again. But not the pig's trotter jelly from earlier. This is fruit jelly made from boiled quinces strained and mixed with honey until it sets. It trembles jewel-toned and fragrant. You take a cautious bite. It's sweet tart and tastes like something that doesn't belong in this century. But medieval taverns were full of these surprises. The man beside you holds up a skewer, roasted chestnuts and salted meat cubes alternated like a culinary seesaw. He offers you one. You bite through charred nut and chewy pork, the salt and earthiness mingling on your tongue like a forest picnic in a thunderstorm. Outside, the church bell rings somewhere in the fog. Inside, the songs begin again, soft, slow, and mournful. The kind of tune that turns your meal into a memory. The room stills just a little. Bowls are half full. Mouths move slower. The laughter quiets down to a warm murmur. The fire throws long shadows. The smell of stew and smoke seeps into your clothes, your hair, your soul. You lean back full and still curious, because every time you think you've tasted everything, the tavern reveals another dish, another odd pairing, another ancient comfort. Supper here isn't just a meal, it's a ritual, a release, a reward for surviving another day. And you're already wondering what tomorrow's pot will hold. Because rumor has it there's a festival approaching, and that means ale-baked breads, boiled boar's head, sweet meat pies, and things that glow in the dark. The tavern wakes before the sun the next morning, because today is no ordinary day. It's festival day. The air is already thick with the perfume of anticipation, meat fat, boiled spices, and wood smoke curling from every open chimney. Even the mud on the streets smells like it's ready for celebration. Inside, you find the taverner directing her makeshift army like a battlefield general. She's covered in flour, holding a ladle like a weapon, and barking orders to a skinny apprentice who's struggling to carry a sack of dried fruit bigger than his head. Festival food isn't just food, it's an event, and you lucky sleeper have front row seating. You're handed a warm mug of clove-spiced ale before you've even sat down. It stings your throat and leaves behind a trail of heat that settles low in your belly. Breakfast is a bowl of wheat porridge with crushed hazelnuts and shaved apple drizzled with something resembling syrup, most likely reduced wine mixed with honey. It tastes like a holiday, like the kind of breakfast that promises you don't have to work today, even if you do. The taverner announces that boar's head is going on the spit, and the entire room shifts. A group of boys is tasked with carrying the thing from the butcher's shed, its snout wrapped in cloth eyes mercifully removed. It's enormous pinkish gray and already scored with cloves for flavor. Over the course of the day, it will be basted with wine stuffed with onions and breadcrumbs and slowly rotated over an open flame until the skin turns crisp and blistered like ancient leather. You find a seat near the fire and sip from a second mug braggot this time. It's a cousin of ale made with fermented honey and spices, stronger than mead, thicker than beer, and the drink of choice on feast days. You drink slowly, knowing your head will pay the price later. The first round of festival dishes arrives not as a feast, but as a flurry of strange, magical things. First, mortrews, a creamy herbed chicken paste made from ground meat, rice milk, and almond flour. It's served on toasted rye and sprinkled with powdered cinnamon. You scoop it up with your fingers. It's like meat porridge and dessert had a secret meeting and made a pact never to explain themselves. Then tart out of Lent a cheese tart filled with soft curds, egg, and saffron. The pastry is light, the filling luxurious. It was designed to mimic rich meat pies on days when meat was forbidden, though no one today seems to care about rules. You devour it in 3 bites. Next to you, a trio of women are unwrapping bundles of food brought from their homes, gifts for the taverner. One reveals a wheel of soft cheese rolled in ash. Another presents pickled walnuts in a ceramic jar. The third opens a cloth to reveal spiced pears, poached in wine and honey, their skins nearly black, the aroma almost floral. These will not last long. A large man with a curved knife is carving slices of pressed beef cured in brine and aged in a cellar for weeks. It's dark red, glistening, and so salty your mouth waters before you even taste it. He serves it with mustard and a slice of oat cake baked on a stone slab. You chew slowly, savoring the richness. Then comes the parade of festival pies. Pies filled with pigeon and truffle. Pies with plums and chopped pork. Even a hedgehog pie not made from hedgehog, thank heavens, but shaped like one. It's molded from spiced dough and decorated with slivered almonds as quills. It looks ridiculous. It tastes divine. On a long table near the back wall, someone lays out buttered warts, a dish of boiled greens drowned in butter and dashed with vinegar. Next to it, eggs and moonshine, a dish of soft-boiled eggs in a pale yellow sauce made from wine herbs and dried rose petals. You hesitate. Then you try it. It's like eating a medieval dream. You're offered a roasted skewer of candied almonds and dates. It sticks to your fingers. You don't care. A small girl passes by with a bowl of bread soaked in sweetened milk, topped with shaved nutmeg. She offers you a bite and skips away laughing before you can thank her. Even the tavern dog is eating better than usual, gnawing on a duck neck stuffed with oats cast off from one of the more experimental pies. Then the singing begins. Not the mournful ballads of tired drinkers, but the kind of celebratory chants that climb up the rafters and make the beams themselves seem to hum. People start clapping in rhythm. One man stands on the table and belts out a verse so foul it makes half the room spit out their cider laughing. The taverner doesn't scold him, she just throws him a sugared fig and tells him to sing the cleaner version before the priest shows up. And yes, there's a priest. He arrives just as the roast boar's head is carried through the room on a plank garnished with apples and crowned with rosemary. The whole tavern goes quiet. It's part reverence, part hunger, part performance. The head is placed at the center of the room, and a toast is given not to God or king, but to the taverner herself. She curtsies mock formal and lifts a ladle like a queen holding court. You're given a slice cheek, meat soft and salty, rich with flavor. There's a kind of sauce on the side, possibly mustard, maybe wine-thickened liver gravy. You don't ask. You eat. You smile. By the end of the meal, your hands are sticky, your stomach heavy, and your thoughts floating. You've eaten things you can't name, drank things you shouldn't remember, and laughed with people whose lives are stitched into every crust and cask. This is more than food. Its survival is celebration. It's poverty dressed in spice and roast and gold leaf. It's a village pretending for one day that it rules the world. And as the night looms again, the tavern's embers glowing like coals under a feast-filled belly, you know this, you'll never look at food the same way again. And tomorrow, the leftovers will be even better. Because medieval taverns didn't believe in waste. They believed in flavor, in fire, and in one more bite. The morning after the festival feels like walking through the remains of a dream, quiet, smoky, and slightly sticky. The tavern still smells of roasted meat and old ale, but now there's a layer of damp wool and spilled braggot clinging to every corner. You step carefully between snoring bodies curled under benches and cloaks past overturned cups and pie crumbs smashed into the floorboards. It's not so much messy as lived in, like a memory stretched out in physical form. The taverner is already up. Of course she is. She's sweeping ash from the hearth, ladling water into the great stew pot, and mumbling to herself about bones. You catch snippets, duck fat's still good, and pig knuckle'll boil soft again. She's not speaking to anyone in particular, just to the stew as if it listens. And maybe it does. Because here's the thing, in a medieval tavern, the party might end, but the food doesn't. The leftovers from a feast aren't waste. They're tomorrow's riches. And today you get to taste the most curious kind of cuisine day after food. You're handed a bowl with no label and no warning. Inside a blend of barley onion boiled chestnut and shreds of yesterday's pork cheek. There's a bit of spice left in it, pepper or maybe clove, and the flavor is deeper now, mellowed by time and reheating. It's richer than the original stew, almost noble. Across from you, a hungover mason gulps down a bowl of gruel made from leftover ale-soaked oats. It's thin and salty, warmed with a slab of lard stirred in until the surface shimmers. He adds a handful of crushed nuts to his bowl and gives you a toothy grin. "Good for the nerves," he says, eyes still half closed. The taverner has also brought out a tray of yesterday's bread, now toasted over the coals and rubbed with garlic. A bowl of vinegar-dipping sauce sits nearby, sharp, acidic, and enlivening. You dip the crusts. You chew slowly. You feel yourself waking up again. Someone else has turned the festival pie fillings into croquettes, little fried patties of minced meat grains and herbs bound with egg and browned in dripping. They're crispy on the outside, soft within, and somehow more satisfying now than they were when fresh. The flavors have married overnight. The rough edges are gone. These are not leftovers, they're evolved dishes. You're poured a mug of small beer, the weaker second-run ale from yesterday's brew. It's safer than water, gently fizzy, and surprisingly easy to drink. Even the children are sipping it with their morning broth. No one bats an eye. Behind the bar, the taverner is slicing up fruit jelly slabs from last night's feast. What's left of the quince and honey has firmed into a chewy candy, which she wraps in linen for travelers. You're given a corner piece and it tastes like sunshine trapped in molasses. Sticky. Wonderful. And then you see it black bread pudding baked in the cooling embers overnight. Made from crumbled rye, old mead, dried apples, and chopped hazelnuts. It's steamed in a cloth sliced thick and served with a spoonful of soft, curdled cream. It's dense like memory, sweet like rest. You take another bite, then another, not quite sure whether it's breakfast or dessert, and not caring at all. A man passes by with cider vinegar soup brewed from leftovers, wild herbs and bones simmered until the marrow leaks into the broth. It's thin but sharp. Cleansing. You watch him sip it like he's praying. You start to notice that the tavern has become quieter today, not solemn, just softer. No one's shouting, no one's singing on the tables. There's a calm that settles after feast and fire. And in that hush, the flavors sing louder. The stew is fuller. The bread is more generous. Even the ale seems wiser. A young woman is carefully layering cold roast slices onto flat oat bread, adding preserved cherries and a smear of spicy mustard. She's making portable meals for the travelers heading out at noon. Each one gets wrapped in cloth and tied with a twist of twine. A medieval takeaway, if you will. At the far table, an old man breaks open a crock of leftover lamb and lentils. The fat has floated to the top and solidified into a pale lid. He cracks it with a spoon, stirs the contents, and reheats it slowly over coals. The scent rises rich, peppery, comforting. He's eaten this same dish for 3 days now. He calls it his stomach's friend. Even the dog has leftovers. Someone tosses it a roasted parsnip dipped in dripping, and it accepts the gift with the solemn gratitude of a creature that knows what hunger used to feel like. Outside, the rain begins, light at first, then steadier. Inside, the air is warm, the stew is thick, and time slows. You chew in silence, not out of exhaustion, but out of reverence. These dishes aren't just food, they're memory made edible. They're scraps turned sacred. You sip your ale and feel your pulse return to a slower beat. Not every day in a medieval tavern is a feast, but the day after, that's when the food becomes honest, deep, forgiving. And if you stick around long enough, you'll see what they do with the bones. Because the next round of dishes, those made from broth, marrow, skin, and stock, are just about to begin. And they might be the most flavorful of all. You don't think you're hungry until the bones start boiling. The tavern smells different now. Not roasted or spiced or freshly baked, but ancient, deep, like the earth itself is cooking. You drift toward the hearth again, drawn by the slow, rhythmic bubbling of the great black cauldron. Inside bones. Not meat, not stew, not pie, just bones. Cracked, blistered, blackened bones from every dish served over the past week. This is bone broth day. The taverner stirs slowly, deliberately. She doesn't rush. She knows this pot needs hours, sometimes a full day, to yield its treasure. You watch as she adds chunks of turnip, a bundle of herbs tied with twine, a handful of barley, a splash of vinegar to help leach the marrow. The scent rises like smoke and memory. You feel it in your chest before it touches your tongue. This broth isn't just food. It's medicine ritual and frugality wrapped into one. The poor get strong from this. The sick get comfort. The old get to chew without chewing. And the tavern once again proves it wastes nothing. You're handed a bowl. It's simple, thin, golden gray, dotted with fat globules that shimmer like stained glass. You sip. It coats your throat with warmth, with salt, with life. There's no meat in this broth, and yet it's more satisfying than roast, more filling than pie, more honest than pottage. At a nearby table, someone is shredding what remains of a smoked mutton shank into the broth, while another crushes stale bread into theirs to thicken it. A third person, elderly, half-blind, just cups the bowl and sips slowly, eyes closed, as though remembering a long-lost voice. And then the taverner brings out something curious, scrap pudding. It's everything that couldn't be served yesterday, boiled again with grains and animal fat, pressed into a mold, then sliced and fried. You take a bite. It's dense, salty, with a crackled crust and a heart like stuffing. You don't know what's in it, and you don't want to. You just know you want more. Someone else is eating onion bone porridge, a thick paste of caramelized onion bone marrow and oat mash. It's savory, slightly sweet, and smells like a funeral procession and a winter feast all at once. Every bite has weight. You're handed a cup of ale-washed turnip mash, thinned with the same bone broth you just sipped and topped with a smear of rendered fat. It's peasant luxury. It tastes like survival dressed up in Sunday clothes. A young boy walks by gnawing on a roasted knucklebone, the cartilage gelatinous, seasoned with salt and dried nettles. He's grinning. His hands are filthy. His belly is full. And across the room, a young couple shares something quiet and beautiful, bread stew. It's nothing more than broth-soaked crusts, slow-cooked until they disintegrate into a kind of medieval risotto. Topped with a spoonful of herb paste, it's fragrant and gentle comfort in edible form. But the real surprise arrives in a wooden bowl carved from a single block of ash. Inside, blood and barley soup, a dish for the brave. It's not gruesome, it's elegant, almost noble. Simmered gently, thickened with barley, and spiced with dried mint, it smells oddly floral. You sip, and for a moment you understand the medieval obsession with not wasting anything. Blood bones, skin breath, it all matters. Even the drinks reflect this philosophy today. A mug of warm bone ale is passed to you. Yes, ale boiled with bones and herbs intended to fortify the blood and warm the humors, according to the taverner. It's bitter, thick, surprisingly good. You drink it slowly with reverence. As the afternoon sun fades, the meal shifts tone. The taverner begins handing out cheese rinds and marrow paste on black bread to those who look most worn. This isn't about flavor anymore. It's about healing, rebuilding, giving the body what the soul used up yesterday. And that's when you hear it, the quiet scraping of a spoon against the bottom of a bowl. A man in the corner finishes the last of his broth, sets the spoon down, and lets out a sigh that could warm a barn. "Best meal I've had all week," he murmurs. No one laughs, because they all agree. You look around and realize that even though the feast is over this moment, this stew of scraps, of bones, of everything left behind is more real, more ancient, more intimate. It's not about pleasure anymore. It's about continuation. As the evening creeps in, someone places a lid over the pot, saving what's left of the broth for tomorrow. The embers are tamped. The mugs are washed. Bread crusts are stacked in a bowl, ready to become tomorrow's base. And you once again full sit back with the warmth of marrow in your belly and the weight of history in your bones. Because the tavern never wastes, and neither does time. And tomorrow, they say, the milk bread returns. You've heard whispers of it, soft, rare, and rumored to taste like hope. You wake the next morning to an unusual sound in the tavern, quiet laughter. Not the drunken roar of midnight toasts or the sharp bark of someone slipping on ale-slick stone. No, this is softer, lighter. A different energy is moving through the room. The tavern smells sweeter. You rub your eyes and sit up still, wrapped in the wool cloak you borrowed from the hook by the door. Sunlight is spilling through the wavy glass panes, casting golden ribbons across the floorboards. In the hearth, fresh kindling crackles, and from the kitchen, the unmistakable scent of baking. It's milk bread day. You're not sure why, but the entire room seems to hold its breath with joy. The taverner, normally a booming force of iron and elbows, is humming a gentle tune with no words. She's pulling trays from a small brick oven, steam billowing around her like a halo. You catch your first glimpse, soft, pale loaves rounded at the top, dusted lightly with flour. Milk bread, the rarest of tavern indulgences. Made with cow's milk, fresh eggs, butter, and white flour, ingredients that rarely converge in the same place unless the gods smile on your pantry. It's fluffier than the hard rye and barley bricks you've grown used to, with a faint sweetness and a golden crust that cracks when you press a finger into it. She slices it thick, hands you a piece still warm. You bite. It's soft. It sighs against your teeth. For a moment you forget the pig's feet, jelly, the vinegared fish, the blood stew. For this one bite you could be anywhere, any time. The bread is rich but subtle, a quiet miracle. She serves it with apple butter made from the orchard's windfalls, cooked slowly with honey, cinnamon, and cloves until spreadable. You smear a generous spoonful across your slice. It melts into the crumb, seeps through your fingers. You don't mind. You'd lick the plate if you had one. At a nearby table, someone's dipping their milk bread into a bowl of honeyed posset, a sweet custard-like drink made from milk, eggs, sugar, and wine. It's dessert disguised as breakfast. You sneak a taste and are stunned by the richness. Thick, spiced, and sticky, it's like drinking velvet. Then the parade begins. The taverner places a plate of golden oatcakes with dried cherries at the center of the table. They're pan-fried in butter until crisp on the outside, and soft within the cherries, puckered and sweet from their long soak in cider. She drizzles them with a reduced syrup made from the same cider and a pinch of rosemary. You stare at your plate like it might disappear. You eat slowly, reverently. A traveler near the fire unwraps a bundle of quarked cheese, crumbly and fresh, tangy, and soft like a cross between yogurt and ricotta. It's spread across another slice of milk bread, topped with a few candied orange peels someone brought from the coast. You taste a bite. It's brightness on bread. A burst of sunshine tucked into a tavern corner. You're given a cup of warm goat's milk frothed by hand and spiced gently with nutmeg and thyme. It's soothing, silky, so different from the bone ale and sour beer of days past. You sip slowly, the warmth curling into your limbs like a cat. Then a small dish appears, saffron rice pudding, pale gold flecked with dried figs and cooked low and slow in milk. A festival's worth of cost in a single bowl. You take a spoonful. It's creamy, sweet, fragrant. You close your eyes. Across the room, a baker's apprentice is proudly presenting milk-curd fritters, little fried dumplings made with soft cheese and rolled in crushed nuts and sugar. She offers them with pride. You bite into one. It's crispy, airy, and bursts with warmth. You want 5 more. Someone plays a slow tune on a pipe. The fire sighs. The room sways not from drunkenness, but from calm, from satisfaction, from the rare kind of peace that only follows softness, sweetness, and the absence of hunger. You catch sight of the taverner sitting now for once. She's pulled off her apron cradles, her own slice of milk bread in her palm, and eats it slowly, smiling faintly. You realize she saved the best ingredients for today, not for nobles, not for coin, but for them. The ones who come every day, rain or snow. The ones who share stew and stories, who trade onions for eggs and sleep by the hearth without shame. Today is not a feast. It's better. It's a gift. You take one last bite of your milk bread, let the apple butter melt down your chin, and lean back, full, rested, grateful, and still, there are dishes you haven't tried. A savory tart made with leeks and eggs, a custard infused with lavender, a bowl of cold, spiced milk curd floating in rose water. But not now. Because after milk bread day, the tavern slows, and soon it will be time to welcome the travelers, and with them, stories of distant lands, and foods you've never even dreamed of. The milk bread is gone, not a crumb left. By noon, the warmth of the hearth has given way to the draft of an open door, and the clatter of hooves echoes through the street like a heartbeat. The tavern has returned to motion. Rest is over. The travelers are arriving. You hear them before you see them. The groan of saddle leather, the rattle of cartwheels, the laugh of a merchant who's seen too much road and not enough food. And then the door swings wide, ushering in cloaks damp with rain, boots heavy with mud, and the sweet stink of movement. Strangers in dust-stained tunics, their eyes scanning the room for the same thing. Every traveler seeks heat food and someone to listen. The taverner doesn't flinch. She knows this rhythm. It's time to feed the road again. She sets the pot to boil, but it's not stew this time. It's traveler's gruel, thin and fast oats, onion-dried parsley, and whatever broth remains from yesterday's bones. The first bowl is served within minutes, handed to a peddler who collapses onto a bench with a grateful grunt. He drinks it straight from the bowl, too tired for spoons. Next, a merchant unwraps a cloth bundle from his pack and offers the contents: spiced chickpeas, flatbread dusted with fennel, and 2 small wheels of hard goat cheese. He's come from the south where olives and lemons still grow. You can smell the sun on his cloak. The taverner accepts the trade and adds his gifts to the table. Suddenly, the tavern is not just medieval, it's interregional. One traveler pulls out candied orange peel wrapped in waxed parchment. Another lays down a jar of preserved garlic so soft it spreads like butter. A third, wide-eyed and ragged, produces a dried fish from the coast. No one asks how long it's been in his satchel. This is how the tavern expands its menu, not with money, but with motion. The taverner begins crafting dishes she hasn't made in weeks. First traveler's tart, made with preserved onions, garlic paste, and slivers of dried ham, all folded into a barley crust. It's savory, smoky, and can be eaten with one hand. She slices it into wedges and passes it down the bar. Then, quick bean mash, cooked with ale and spiked with mustard seed, served in a shallow bowl with a slab of barley bread. It smells like vinegar and warmth. You take a bite. It tastes like energy food designed to carry you over hills and storms. More dishes appear born from the strange convergence of strangers and leftovers. Someone mixes dried figs with cheese and presses them between 2 oatcakes. Another boils a few sprigs of sage and mint into a thin tea, served with honey and lemon peel. You've never had anything like it. It tastes like healing. From one of the travelers, a pot of camelina sauce is opened, an oil-based blend of ground mustard vinegar and sweet wine. It's sharp floral used to liven up salt-cured meat or boiled roots. The taverner tastes it, nods once, then drizzles it over a cold pie and hands it to a minstrel with sore feet. And then just when you think the menu couldn't get more curious, a jar is placed reverently on the table. It contains pickled duck eggs floating in a cloudy solution of garlic peppercorns and vinegar. The taverner eyes them, sniffs once. Then, to your horror and delight, she cracks one open, slices it, and serves it over a mash of dried peas. You try it. It is strange, strong, unapologetic, like the taste of someone else's home. But it grows on you. And that's the thing, everything here grows on you. The taverner brings out the simmer pot again. Into it she drops lentils, chopped dried apples, and the heel of a cheese rind. A traveler tosses in a pinch of saffron, rare and bright. Another adds a finger-length stick of cinnamon from a pouch tied to her ankle. It smells like a market in a faraway place. It smells like a story. Soon the travelers begin to talk. A tale of a tavern near the sea that serves beer with raw oysters and boiled nettle leaves. A myth of a monastery that brews cherry wine so strong it can put the devil to sleep. One man claims he tasted bread so soft it was used as a pillow. Another swears he ate a pudding made of boiled rose petals and goat's milk. No one believes him, but the room leans in anyway. As the fire crackles low, the taverner makes one last dish for the evening far-flung stew. She names it on the spot. A bit of this, a sliver of that. Chickpeas, onion, pepper, fish, skin, pickled walnuts, lentils, garlic, and dried pear. It shouldn't work. It does. It's stew that traveled, that listened, that gathered pieces of the world and turned them into something edible. You drink it from a bowl carved smooth by a dozen other mouths. You feel the road in it. Tonight the tavern is not just a kitchen. It's a crossroad, a collection point, a mouth that speaks in flavor. You lean back, bowl empty, heart full. You've tasted more in this room than some nobles eat in a year. And tomorrow, when the travelers are gone, the pot will go back to barley and bones. But for now, you know what it feels like to eat the whole world without ever leaving your bench. The travelers are gone. By dawn, their boots had already worn fresh tracks into the frost-covered dirt. The door creaked shut one last time behind the last cart, and the tavern once again belongs to the village. But something lingers. The smell of saffron clings to the rafters. A bit of camelina sauce still crusts the ladle. Someone's lost fig has rolled beneath the hearth, and you're certain the taverner knows it's there. She just hasn't decided whether to serve it or frame it. You settle back into your usual corner as the rhythm returns. A slower, humbler beat. The feast is over. The stories have quieted. Now it's time for preservation. The taverner wastes no time. The morning begins with a great sorting jars are opened, crockery lids inspected, bread crusts stacked and sun-dried for use in next week's stews. A large wooden board is cleared and sprinkled with salt. She lays out thin slices of pork from what's left of the roast and dusts them with dried rosemary. She's making salt pork rounds to be hung in the cellar for leaner times. You watch as she pulls down a clay jug filled with soured milk. Not spoiled soured, intentional. It's curdled into a thick, tangy base, perfect for a dish called clabber cake, a flatbread made from leftover flour milk curd and a pinch of ash from the hearth. It's not pretty. It's not fluffy, but it's full of energy. And when warmed with a touch of lard, it tastes like determination. Next comes the root chopping. Carrots, turnips, and onions are sliced into long strips and tossed into a vinegar bath. She'll leave them sealed for weeks, maybe months. You ask what dish they'll be used for. She shrugs. Anything. That's the genius of preservation flexibility. Survival disguised as preparation. You're handed a small bowl of pickled cabbage mash, served cold with a dollop of crushed mustard seed. It snaps on the tongue like a whip, but clears your head like fresh air. You eat it slowly, letting your taste buds readjust after days of pies and puddings. By the hearth, An apprentice is busy stirring a dark, bubbling pot fruit scrap jam. Not quite a jelly, not quite a spread, just overripe pears, bruised apples, and yesterday's fig ends boiled down with a squeeze of honey and whatever cloves they could spare. It's tart, textured, almost alive. You spread it on rye bread so tough it could stop an arrow. The jam softens it barely. Someone brings in a bundle of nettles harvested fresh from the edge of the woods. The taverner's eyes light up. Nettles, when boiled, are a gift. Tonight there will be nettle soup, a thin green broth flavored with garlic and enriched with a splash of bone stock. It's bitter, but after days of heavy meat and butter, it tastes like a restart. Out comes the cheese press. She's making pressed curd cheese, a blocky, dense wedge to last through winter. No herbs, no fanciness, just curdled milk salt and patience. You take a slice. It squeaks against your teeth, tastes like chalk and grass and quiet. It's perfect. You're offered roasted oat mash reheated in a pan with scraps of dried onion. It's plain, comforting, the culinary equivalent of a wool blanket. You don't need excitement anymore, just something that grounds you. On the shelf behind the bar, new jars appear. One labeled pickled duck skin, another beetroot vinegar mash. The last one ominously has no label, just a single line scratched into the clay. You ask. The taverner winks. "Future stew," she says. A boy walks in carrying eggs still warm from the hen. She pays him in crusts, then whisks one egg with dried milk and a pinch of nutmeg to make egg custard spoon bread. It's soft, warm, barely sweet. You hold the spoon in your mouth longer than necessary, savoring. You notice something, then the tavern is preparing to vanish. Not entirely, just to shrink. When food is scarce, so too is sound. Light, laughter. Even the fire becomes efficient, smaller, less celebratory, and more functional. The taverner starts wrapping things cheese in cloth roots and straw-dried fish and paper oat cakes in leaf bundles. She's building a pantry for tomorrow, for next week, for when the next wagon gets stuck in the pass and the village must eat from memory alone. She hands you a strip of dried apple soaked in vinegar. "Good for the gums," she says. You chew it. It's sour. Rubbery. Not your favorite. But maybe you're not meant to love today's food. You're meant to learn from it. Because preservation isn't just a method. It's a message. We were here. We made enough. We planned for the lean days. And tomorrow, when the stew returns, basic barley heavy boiled till silent, you'll be grateful for every pickled thing, every salted flake, every dried rind turned golden in the pot. Because nothing here is wasted. Not the feast, not the stories, not even the crumbs. Evening drapes itself across the tavern like a woolen cloak, heavy and frayed at the edges. Outside, the wind howls across empty fields and rattles the shutters like a beggar's hand. Inside, everything is quiet, not silent. There's always some sound here, but hushed, respectful, as if the tavern itself knows that tonight marks the end of a long, unusual stretch of days. The taverner is moving slower now. Her sleeves are damp, her feet bare on the warm stone floor. She ladles the night's stew with careful hands, not from fatigue, but from memory. Each scoop of barley and root pottage contains the echo of days past, a sliver of smoked fish, a shaving of preserved turnip, a whisper of yesterday's onion. It smells humble, It smells like coming home. You take your bowl and sit near the hearth, where a few glowing coals offer more comfort than heat. Around you, the regulars have returned to their regular places. The traveling faces are gone, their stories tucked into the corners of the tavern like forgotten scarves. What remains is the everyday, the pulse beneath the festival, the meal that asks for nothing but time. The stew is thick, earthy. You can taste the vinegar from the preserved greens, the sweetness from dried apples, and the faint trace of marrow cooked down to its essence. You chew slowly, letting your thoughts settle. No surprises here, just warmth. A young girl carries in a basket of foraged mushrooms. Small, gray, brittle things. Not valuable. Not poisonous either, just enough. The taverner nods. She'll dry them near the hearth and grind them into powder for winter broth. Nothing is wasted, not even the things that taste like dust. On the bar, someone's left a wheel of aged sheep's cheese. It's cracked dry and sharp as iron. You take a sliver and let it melt slowly. It bites your tongue, then soothes it, like the week you've just lived. And then a surprise, a small clay pot is passed around with quiet reverence. Rosehip and onion jam, sweet, tangy, and strange in the best way. The kind of flavor you can't explain, only remember. You spread it on crusty oat bread, and it reminds you at even the end of a long stretch can still carry beauty. Someone hums a song near the back. Low, wordless. You don't know the tune, but it feels older than the stones under your feet. A song sung while stirring soup, while binding wounds, while waiting for spring. And there, beneath the bench, you spot a kitten curled in the crook of a sleeping drunk's arm, both snoring softly. It's absurd. It's perfect. You smile and sip your dandelion tea steeped in a cracked mug, the leaves gathered by the taverner herself from the path behind the privy. Everything has a place here, even the weeds. Someone lifts a bowl of lentil mash and offers it to an old man too tired to chew. He nods, eats slowly. You see his hand tremble, but not from cold. From something else. Memory, maybe. Or gratitude. Then the door creaks open one last time. Not a traveler, but the village cooper, his hands still smelling of pitch and sawdust. He exchanges a bundle of kindling for a loaf of black bread with marrow fat. The barter is silent. Understood. Necessary. The taverner sets her ladle down and finally sits. She's not smiling, not frowning, just resting. She sips her broth, wipes her hands, and watches the room, the way one might watch a fire die, knowing there will be warmth again, but not yet. And in this stillness you feel something profound, the ritual of routine. The daily act of turning scraps into survival, of turning guests into neighbors, of turning hunger into history. You finish your bowl, lick the last of the jam from your fingers, wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Tomorrow the stew will begin again, and it won't be glamorous. It won't have travelers or pies shaped like animals, but it will be real, and that's what you'll remember. Because this tavern doesn't serve food. It serves life in all its simple, steaming, salted forms. Night falls thick and absolute like a lid drawn over the world. The tavern is dark now, lit only by the lazy flicker of a half-hearted fire and a single guttering candle at the bar. You sit in the same spot as always, your back to the wall, your feet drawn close to the warmth. The bowl in your hands is almost empty, just a smear of barley stew with mushroom powder left around the rim. It's the last of the last. Not even the dog licks his plate anymore. The air is quiet but full, full of sighs, full of creaking wood and shifting cloth, full of the kind of silence that speaks more than any song. You glance around the room and see it mirrored on every face contentment. The sharp edges of hunger dulled the nervous hands of travel, calmed the long ache of winter, softened by something hot, seasoned, and shared. Across from you, the taverner is laying out cloth bundles, prepped oatcakes for tomorrow, dried mushroom strips tied in hemp string, a small pot of fat rendered from marrow and onions. Each is placed gently, not out of ceremony, but out of respect. She knows what it means to store flavor, what it means to save warmth for another day. There's a small plate of nut cakes by the bar, now made from ground hazelnuts, honey scraps, and leftover breadcrumbs. One is left. You don't reach for it. Neither does anyone else. It's a kind of test, maybe, or a shared superstition. The tavern always leaves something for tomorrow. Near the fire, a boy is stirring a shallow pot of leek water-thinned broth for a sick uncle asleep by the hearth. It smells faint, barely food, but the act, the care behind it, is rich enough to fill the room. You sip from your mug, weak ale thinned with nettle water, and find it tastes exactly like this moment, bitter, warm, honest. Someone hums again, the same wordless tune from nights before. You're not sure if it's a lullaby or a prayer. Maybe both. It rises, then fades like steam curling up and out into the beams. And that's when you realize what this tavern truly is. It's not just a building. It's a belly, a memory, a mouth that never stops moving. A space where time is stirred into soup and eaten down to its bones, where strangers become stories and food becomes firelight. And tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and your breath slows, you feel the truth settle into your bones. This was never just about what medieval people ate. It was about what they made from nothing. It was about the taste of survival dressed in barley and salt. It was about warmth held in bowls passed from hand to hand across time. And as the candle finally gutters out and your head begins to nod, and the tavern folds itself into a slow, breathing silence, you feel full, not just in the stomach, but in the soul. And now with the hearth just embers, and your thoughts softening like butter in a warm pan, it's time to let go of the flickering images and drift deeper. Imagine the tavern now empty of sound, but still alive. The old wood beams creak like gentle snores. The stew pot, scrubbed and drying, rests beside the hearth, ready to be filled again with tomorrow's hope. The floor still remembers footsteps. The benches hold the warmth of 100 resting backs. And that single slice of bread left uneaten, untouched, waits patiently for morning. Outside, the wind curls around stone walls, harmless now. The world can wait. The hunger can wait. Because tonight, everything is still. Everything is enough. You feel your breath slow, the weight of your blanket, the softness behind your eyes. Let yourself imagine the warmth of that bowl in your hands. Again, the scent of herbs and steam rising in slow spirals. Let yourself believe that comfort can be this simple: a spoon, a story, a seat near the fire. There is no need to chase anything now. No need to cook or question. The meal is done. The story is told. The coals are low, but they glow just enough to remind you someone was here. Someone stirred the pot. Someone shared what they had. and now you rest.